Hi, Dr. Orlena. It's so wonderful to have you on the Genetic Genius podcast today. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yay. Well, I'm so excited for us to really dive deep into talking about healthy living, how to make that easy, and weight loss as well. But before we kind of go deep into that, I'd love for you to talk, just a little bit about yourself, your story, what inspired you to be where you are today.
Well, thank you for asking. So, I am from the UK. I trained as a doctor and I was doing pediatrics. And I there are many reasons, I guess, I went into medicine. One of them was that I wanted to travel. Ironically, I find myself living in Spain and not working as a doctor. So around 10 years ago, I moved to Spain thinking, oh, I'll just carry on my career. I say I moved with my eyes wide shut. And it's a very long story, but that didn't quite happen. So I then found myself living in Spain, and I had two small children. And then I had a third small child who turned into two more children because they were twins. Number three was 3 and 4. And I wanted to do something and I didn't really know what. So I turned to the internet. Back at this time, I didn't even know what a blog was, but I started really thinking about healthy eating for children and really picky eating for children because, hey, guess what? I had picky eaters, which really surprised me, particularly as I'd spent a lot of time in clinical practice with people coming to me, with consequences of healthy eating or lack of healthy eating. So typically a lot of children go to hospital, go and see their pediatrician saying, oh, I've got tummy ache. And quite often it's because they're constipated. And quite often that constipation is because they aren't eating enough fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just glibly say to the parents, oh, you just need to get them to eat more fruit and vegetables. It's so easy.
Right. No problem.
Exactly. And then I obviously had my own children and I was a bit like, oh, they don't seem to be eating the fruit and vegetables. They seem to be eating all the pasta and the other things that I'm giving them. So it really opened my eyes to how amazingly frustrating it can be when you have young children. And it really made me dive into healthy eating for kids. And then along the way, I basically, what they say, pivoted and decided that I was really going to focus on the mum more than the children. And for many reasons, partly because what I realized was that a lot of mums or parents actually, they want to teach their children healthy eating, but they aren't doing healthy eating themselves. And that's an impossible place to be. You can't teach your children healthy eating unless you're doing it yourself.
Right.
Exactly. And I guess along the way as well, like when I was in that space, and we'll talk about my 4 pillars in a moment, but one of my pillars is emotional wellness. And I really felt that I lost my identity and I could see myself on one level living this amazing, idyllic holiday life, and on another level, somewhere deep inside, and it was quite deep inside, but not really feeling fulfilled or happy or the person that I wanted to be. And I taught myself, with the help of reading zillions of self-help books and courses and worked out how to get out of that. But then I realized that I was not alone, that there are so many other people who have the same problem. Their symptoms may be slightly different. So for me, it was this internal sort of turmoil, I think. For other people, it might manifest as being overweight, or it might be something else. But quite often we have this, I've lost myself, or I'm not being the best person that I want to be. And so those two things really contributed to me going, okay, what I want to do is this. I want to empower people to live their most amazing and healthy life. So it's about being healthy, but it's also about grasping this life that we have and going, I can live my most amazing, awesome life. And it's not this, oh, I have to have a yacht and diamonds dripping off my fingers. It's being normal. So I think I have the most amazing, luxurious life. I get to swim in the sea. Well, it's summertime as we record this, but I swam in the sea this morning. Now, well, obviously that's free. It doesn't cost me anything, but I'm so lucky to be able to do that. And I do the things that I want to do. And it's that place that I want people to get to where they think, my life is amazing. My life is absolutely amazing. And I get to do the things I want to do. And my body is fit and fabulous, and I enjoy moving it, and I'm just invested in everything I do, and I love it. So that's my
Mm.
long story.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Dr. Orlena. That is, such a great place to help people from, especially when you're talking about, having that empathy and sympathy for the mom, right? And we're living in such busy worlds right now. And then having the time to take care of yourself and then take care of your kids can be a huge mountain to climb. And so it's a great place to help people.
Yes. And I always say to mums, the best thing you can give your kids is your own happiness. And I genuinely
Mhm.
believe that. And then I like to add, and the second best thing you can give your kids is vegetables, because that's also very true.
Right. Happiness comes from vegetables and vice versa,
Well,
right?
it does, it does.
Yes, I totally believe that. Well, I love your philosophy about, really helping to make live a healthy life easy. Because I know, coming from that, and you have your own patient practice from before too with pediatrics, and we hear patients say like it's so challenging to live healthy, right, when you're in that chronic disease state or trying to get on that healthy platform. And I really like that you simplify it, because I think when we simplify it for patients, they just like the smile happens, right? That happy
Yeah.
place comes so easily. And so why do you think that it's so difficult for people to live healthy? What do you think is like the hang up?
Oh, I know exactly. This is one of my favorite topics, and it's all about habits, systems, and routines. Now, the thing about habits is habits are things that we do repeatedly without thinking about them. And to our brains, a habit is a habit. Our brain does not care which habit we have. To our
Right.
brain, a habit of getting up and running on Saturday morning is exactly the same as the habit of sitting on the sofa binge watching Netflix. It's exactly the same to our brain, but
Mm,
clearly to our body, it isn't the same. And the consequences of those two actions are obviously different. Now, obviously, there's, if I'm not saying you should never sit on the sofa and relax a little bit, that's fine. But it's all about being intentional and knowing what we're doing. And what I say is, it's like there's a rickety bridge between where we are now. We've got all of these habits, which we are totally unaware of,
mm,
and where we want to get to, which is healthy living, which has different habits. So the first stage is to become aware of them, because
right.
you can't change something you're not aware of. But
Hmm.
then you have to walk across this rickety bridge. And the problem with the rickety bridge is our habits are those things that we go back to, our default position when life happens. So
That's right.
when life gets busy, we go to those habits. So it may be that your habit is to eat vegetables, and that's just what you do in times of COVID when lockdown first happened. It might just be, okay, I just eat vegetables. This is what we do. This is normal life. Or it might be, oh, it's to cook pasta and cakes and all these other things and treat myself. And my habit is actually to avoid that emotion of stress and worry that I'm feeling
Hmm.
with eating. And we can change those habits. But as you walk across the rickety bridge, life happens. And
Hmm.
when life happens, we go back to our old habits. It's like there's an elastic band pulling you back. And
Right.
then you get pulled back and you go, oh my goodness, I'm back where I started.
Mm,
And that's actually when people start to feel deflated and hopeless and think, oh my goodness, it's me. I can't do it. Nothing works for me. I can't make this change. But it's not that. It's just you have a human mind and a human body, and that's the way it's wired. And once you
right.
understand that and you can see, okay, I need to create this habit, then it just becomes so easy.
Right. Yeah. And then so you're when you're trying to create the new habit, or you can see you have the vision of like, okay, this is a habit I'm trying to break. Like you said, like maybe you're more into having carbs as your comfort food. So how do you then make that separation of recognizing the habit as something you want to break, making the new habit, and how do you like, the transition over that rickety bridge so that they're more that smooth transition between the two?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good question. And this does kind of depend. And I think the first thing is to become aware of all of your habits. So I recommend doing a habit audit from time to time, where you sit down and you really have a look at all the habits you have, because you have habits in, I know we haven't talked about the 4 pillars yet, but you have habits in all 4 of those pillars, which includes, we have habits in the way that we think and in the way that we turn up and in our emotions. So all of those are habits as well. And then I think the next really big step is to create what I call your inner motivation, your goal of where you get to. And I love doing this exercise with people, because when people feel stuck where they are, and then you start to open their eyes and say, well, look, what would happen if you could do this? And if you could do that, if you could make these changes, where would you be in 10, 20 years time? How amazing would your life be? And suddenly people start to think, oh my goodness, I could feel fit and fabulous, and I could really love the way I eat, and it could be healthy food, and I could enjoy my body, and all of these amazing things. And when I say enjoy my body, I mean I could do running or walking or swimming and actually enjoy it, as opposed to, oh my goodness, I have to do this,
a chore.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that inner motivation is really, really important, because it keeps you going through the rickety bridge. And then you get to the stage of, okay, so now we're going to think about which habits we're going to change. Now, if you're doing it by yourself, you want to take one habit and you want to change that habit until it becomes a habit, until you've, made one small change. If you're working with a health coach or someone helping you, I think you can make more changes, because you're doing it in a more systematic way. And also you've got somebody who's holding you accountable and, for example, pushing you a little bit more, or saying, hey, slow down, you're doing too many changes. Because if you do too many changes all at once, suddenly life happens and you go back and you can't maintain them. You're juggling too many balls, and that's when you feel like a failure. And there's actually been research on this, that if you try and do too many things all at once, you end up not doing anything. You're much better off just doing one small thing and building on that.
Yeah. And then you feel successful, right? You're like, I did something, as opposed to like, you feel like a failure, and then you don't want to try anything else.
Exactly. And then when you look at, how am I going to make these changes, understanding how habits work is really amazing, because people say, oh, it's all about discipline. If you're living this healthy life, you must be really, really disciplined. And the answer is no, it's not. The secret isn't discipline. The secret is really to set your life up so that you make it easy to do healthy habits, and you make it difficult to do the habits that you don't want to. And I explain this as if we have got 2 separate brains. Well, really we have different parts of our brain, but we have that thinking part of our brain which goes, oh, I've got a really good idea. Let's give up chocolate for a month. And then you've got your habit part of the brain, which goes, okay. And then obviously at 3 o'clock in Monday afternoon, when you're feeling a bit tired, it's like, oh, it's chocolate time. And your thinking brain goes, no, we said we were giving up chocolate. And your habit brain goes, it's 3 o'clock. We do chocolate at this time. This is it.
This is it.
This is chocolate time. So you've got this discussion between your brains, and that's when discipline is the issue. But if you use your thinking brain and think, okay, I know at 3 o'clock when I get back from work or dropping the kids off, I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to want to do something. How can I make that chocolate habit bad or disappear? Well, I'm going to make sure there's no chocolate in the house. I'm going to make sure I don't drive past the garage where I normally buy the chocolate. And then I'm also going to replace it with something else. I'm going to think about how I can basically solve that problem of me feeling tired. And it might be implementing other things during your day, but it might be, oh, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do something different. And so now you're beginning to replace that habit and go, okay, I've got this chocolate habit, this I'm feeling tired habit, but actually I'm going to go for a walk with my children. How am I going to make sure that happens? I'm going to get my partner to come with me. I'm just, inventing things.
Right.
But now it begins to work.
Totally.
You're building on this habit and using your thinking brain so that when your habit brain goes, oh, it's chocolate time, you can go, well, there's no chocolate. So if you want chocolate, you have to go to the supermarket, and that's going to take you at least an hour. So how about you just get on with your walk now?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's exactly. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think of it like the distraction technique, right? So you have to have a distraction, but then the reward system has to come into play too. It's like, okay, instead of having the chocolate, like your example was, I'm going to have a distraction of the walk. And then I'm going to give myself, maybe I have like a wonderful juice bar at the end of my walk, or I have something, a different type of sweet treat that's much more healthy, or something to implement. I think that is always really helpful for myself when I'm trying to remove the bad habit. How do you, since you mentioned a little bit about the individuality of one person making a habit change, how does that then transition to if you're trying to change a habit deep in your household? That, say you have all of your family has this repetition of eating something that you're trying to change, and especially if you have children, how do you implement this new habit as a household change?
Yeah, another really great question. And I think it does depend on families, and it depends on the dynamic of the family. So there are different situations. And one is that you have got husband and wife, or mum and dad, who are together and working. They both want to make changes. And that's the easiest situation, because if they are both in agreement that, yes, this is the way we want to eat, then suddenly it becomes much easier. And your children will just follow through. And it's really interesting, actually, that children will make changes quite easily. And essentially, children are what I call glucose seeking missiles. It's well, as are adults, actually.
Right, totally.
Yeah. And it's not natural for them to want to eat broccoli and cabbage and things like that. But once we understand that and go, okay, I know that you're always going to ask for cake. If you're given any option, you'll ask for cake.
Right.
That's normal. But we find ways of giving them options which isn't cake versus broccoli. It's like, well, do you want carrots or peas? So you can still give them options without it being, like, well, what do you want to eat every day? Because they will give you the same answer.
Right, pizza and French fries or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But they do accept this change. So I remember a few years ago saying that we were going to stop having dessert. Now I look back and I never really understand why I implemented dessert in our family. I think it was, I had this idea that children needed to have yogurt for dessert. Anyhow, a few years later down the line, I kind of realized that what was happening when my children were saying, I'm not going to eat any of the main course because I know there's going to be dessert afterwards. So why would I bother with those fruit and vegetables?
Right.
So I got to the stage where I'm like, okay, then we just won't have dessert, because you don't need dessert and you're refusing to eat the healthier food. So I said, right, we're just going to have dessert on Friday and Saturday, and it can be a healthy dessert.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that they were just going to, make a huge, great fuss. And they didn't. They just accepted it. But that was because I had accepted it. I had made this decision, a bit like when you put a seatbelt on. There's no one there enforcing you to put a seatbelt on, except that internally we have made a decision that our children are going to wear a seatbelt, and that's a non-negotiable. Now, children are very, very good at knowing when there is a little niggle of doubt,
Right.
and they're going to push that
They're
button.
smart.
So, yeah, exactly. So if they say, oh, what's for dessert on Friday? And you haven't really made up your mind whether you're going to give them an apple or an ice cream, if they smell any doubt at all, they'll be having ice cream. You can
Right.
just,
That's it.
yeah, exactly. So it's
Mhm.
about having systems that work for your family, and limits as well. But those limits have to be limits that you stick to. And so you have to be happy with those limits, because if you're not happy with those limits, then your children will know, and they will use them against you, essentially.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's great. I love that, how that tie in. And let's kind of move into we got a little bit off track, but not really. But I wanted just to talk about weight loss, because we started kind of like on this road of making new habits. And I know that's such a important part of kind of like your practice and how you help. And why do you think, so we were talking a little bit about frustration, and well, how can people move from that place? So someone's trying to lose weight and they're in that mode of frustration. Nothing seems to be budging. And then they have that overwhelm. How do they move in from that place into a place of like second nature where things are like, oh, I have this. And then I'm trying to put this new habit in, but every time I try to do it, it just falls off the wagon.
Yeah. So again, it's about systems, habits, and routines. And when I work with my clients, either in my group program or my one-on-one program, I walk people through a 2-week reboot. And the reason for that is to do, like, it essentially disrupts your habits. There's so many good reasons to do it, but it's 2 weeks of, I'm going to be super, super healthy and
right.
decide what you're going to do. And I mean, it's a really good practice. It retrains your brain, it retrains your body, it retrains your taste buds. So it almost shows you, oh my goodness, I can do this. And then you need to create after that. I mean, you can carry on doing that if you want to, but after that, you can change things a little bit depending on how quickly you want to lose weight. And it's about getting the balance right of understanding your busy life and healthy food options.
Right.
So it might be that, you know, you're super, super busy and you really, really want to cook everything from scratch every single day, but you just don't have time.
You don't have time to make the glorious meal.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, you have to have these really in-depth, complicated meals. That's just not realistic for your life. So you have to pick something that's super easy, but you also want something that's going to work with your children. So you can make adjustments, you know, and think, okay, my kids really, really love pizza. Friday night is pizza night. Okay, well, we're going to keep pizza night, but what we're going to do is make sure you give appropriate portions for everybody, not just your children, but for yourself as well, and have lots of vegetables in there. So again, it comes back to this self-awareness and creating systems and habits and routines that work for you. And the answer to how do I sort of ingrain that is you just keep doing it. You just keep doing it. So on one level, all a habit is a repeated behavior. You just keep doing it. But it's that, what I call a baby seedling habit, that is the danger zone. Because if you don't look after that baby seedling habit, then it sort of gets squashed. Exactly. And it hasn't grown into a big proper habit. And that's when you end up going back and things getting all overwhelmed. But essentially, it's just repeat. Right. And I would add in, you know, looking and seeing, well, this is working really well, this isn't working so well. And having that awareness, whether it's individually or for your family, to make sure that everybody's needs are getting met, including your own needs, and that you're creating systems that work for your family.
Right. So it sounds like when you're looking at how your whole family relates together and then creating a system that becomes more natural for your family. And then everyone becomes like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is easy for us. And then we're in that place of frustration, coming back to that original place, like you talked about before, that, how you phrased it, the guide, like your habit guide or your reboot, you know, coming back to that place where you're looking at your habits and seeing like, okay, this is what's happening in my life. I'm going to make this change with simplicity, but then reevaluating it when you fall back again over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would say is when you stand here at point A and you want to get to point B, so many people think, oh, it's just going to be this straight line. I'm just going to do one step.
Right. No, it's like this.
Exactly. It's not going to be like that. If you can stand here and go, the route to get to where I want to get to what I call amazing, healthy you, it's not going to be, oh, I'm going to decide to give up chocolate and then I'm never going to eat chocolate again. It doesn't happen like that. No,
that's not going to make you happy if you do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can see that you are going to have some obstacles along the way, you can anticipate them. And then when you get there, I call them golden learning opportunities, because they are golden learning opportunities. So using the chocolate analogy, you decide you're going to give up chocolate and then you find yourself eating chocolate and it happens to be 3:00 in the afternoon and you think, what's going on here? And a couple of times you'll eat chocolate and then you'll go, what is it? I'm feeling tired and stressed. And that's when that self-awareness piece sort of clicks in and you think, oh, I'm eating chocolate because I'm feeling tired and stressed and I haven't looked after myself. And that gives you those tools to be able to say, okay, so how can I look after myself? And it might be that you decide to do some more exercise or to do some meditation. You know, there's so many different tools that you can
Right.
use, and you want to find those tools that work for you. It might be that you don't actually have to do anything at 3 o'clock. It might be that you go, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to do a half-hour run. And then at lunchtime, I'm going to do a 10-minute meditation. And at 3 o'clock now, I'm feeling fine and I don't need that chocolate
Yeah,
anymore.
you recharged in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why I say those moments are always golden learning opportunities, because if you've got a repeated behavior that you're trying to change and it's still happening, there's a reason for it happening. Something's happening underneath that you aren't aware of and you're not fixing it.
Right. Yeah. It's like that golden moment in your time frame that you're like, okay, if I can see this within my glasses, like everything opens up. Because a lot of times that awareness piece when it comes to health is kind of like lost along the way, especially when you're in that state of frustration or you're feeling ill. It's like you can't even see the golden moment because everything is so clouded over. And so if you can just have a glimpse, right? Just that glimpse
Yeah.
of awareness, then you're able to use that as planted as a seed, like you said, for that little seedling to nurture it and to help it grow into this better place of on the path of your healing and health.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is, I think people are generally really mean to themselves and they're really judgmental of themselves. And so when they get there and they say, I want to give up chocolate. Oh, I ate chocolate at 3 o'clock. They're very mean to themselves. And then they say, oh my goodness, you're such a failure. You can't do anything, as opposed
Right.
to, oh, I ate some chocolate. I wonder why that was. And when
Mm-hmm.
you can get to that place of being curious rather than furious with yourself,
Right.
suddenly that's when things start to sort of work and change. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think if you can just have this idea of, I'm a human and I've got a human body and a human mind, and this is how we work. And yeah, these are the tools I've got. I can change things. It didn't happen the first time, but that's okay. I can still keep doing it. I can still keep trying. I'm going to try a slightly different thing to see if that works.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I like what you said too, that self-judgment piece, when that comes in, we're so critical on ourselves, just a little thing like, oh, I didn't do that, and that's a great kind of like segue into that like strict and discipline, which I think you mentioned a little bit, but when we're what's that kind of that you mentioned the rubber band, that breathing room of when we're so strict and so disciplined on ourselves, why does that backfire so much when it comes to weight loss? When we're in this kind of like, it's almost like we create this bubble of perfection. If I don't
Yeah.
have if I don't meet A, B, and C on my perfect line that you're talking about, like not being from A to B, if I don't meet those criteria, then I totally failed. And
Yeah.
what's that difference of being with the strictness and the freedom, I guess, like you're saying, that curiosity and
Yeah, I think
curiosity.
it's really interesting. I think it comes back to self-judgment, but I call that black and white thinking, and I see that a lot. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I see it with someone who says, I know I'm using chocolate a lot. I'm going to give up
Is
chocolate.
that on your brain today?
It's not actually, strangely. Well, strangely, I drink a lot of cocoa, actually, a lot of cocoa powder with zero sugar in it. And I
Yeah.
think that sorts out my chocolate fix because it's the same flavor. It just doesn't have any sugar in it.
Right.
For example, they might say, oh, I don't want to eat chocolate. And then you have a bite of chocolate and then you think, I have failed. I'm going to eat the entire bar of chocolate.
Right.
And it's like, hang on a minute, that doesn't make sense.
Right. How
Eating
did you
10
jump over
times
that?
eating 10 times the amount of chocolate is going to have 10 times the amount of sugar in it. It's not like there's an on-off button, which I think a lot
Yeah.
of people see. And I think when you start analyzing it and looking at your brain and also your physiology and go, okay, so that's 10 times as much sugar, that is 10 times as bad as having one bit of chocolate.
Right.
So you're much better off going, oh, I had one bite of chocolate. That's interesting. I wonder why that happened. Let's stop now. As opposed to, here's my excuse to eat the entire bar, which, yeah, that black and white thinking. But, there are lots of other examples of that. So the same is like, oh, it's not working. So I'm going to jack it all in and I'm not going to do any of it. It's just not working for me. Well, it is working for you, but you're expecting immediate results. If you think about how long it's taken you to put on weight, a lot of times I talk to people and they will say, Well, a lot of people say it's when I had children, and my children are now 7. So, I've had this weight for 7 years. Some people have it from, before that. Had problems when I was a child, and I've grown up. So, it can be 10, 20 more years. And you expect to change that in a month or 2 months.
Right. Instantaneously.
Yeah. And you want to do it more slowly, and it's going to reverse, and it's going to take time, but that's absolutely fine. I love to do this exercise called the crossroads exercise. So you're standing here at the crossroads, and you think, if I carry on as I am and I don't make any changes, where am I going to be in 20 years' time? Or I can start to make changes now. Where will I be in 20 years' time?
Right.
And the difference is huge. If you think about where will I be in 2 months' time, the difference isn't going to be very much, because you haven't given it time to manifest. But the other thing is, if you look at that long-term picture, you don't worry so much about these little obstacles, because instead of thinking, oh my goodness, that's it, I'm not going to make the end of week goal that I had, you think, oh, but my goal is in 5 years' time. So I've still got time to make it, and I can still keep going. And okay, I didn't do as well as I wanted to this day, but I've got another, I don't know, 10,000 days to go. So it's all fine.
10,000 days, right? That totally seems manageable. Yeah, that's really key, I think, is having that, that crossroads place, because a lot of people, and you mentioned it earlier too, having that vision of where you want to be and having that be attainable. But then also knowing that if you have something in the past, like you said, if you've had this weight that you've been carrying for X amount of years, or like a chronic disease state or some emotional aspect, you're not going to be able to release that baggage instantaneously off your body and then be this other person. You have to be like, okay, I need to slowly remove the layers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then what about if do you work with people that have a component of food addictions or food disorders when it comes to making that change and transition in weight loss? Because let's say, for instance, say someone has had a memory or circumstance where when they were younger, we form so many food habits as children, right? And so if they're taking that food habit that they've learned as a child that maybe has some trauma connected to it, how do they then transition to removing that or working with that piece? Because I think that's a very different habit, one where it's like, that trauma piece, or even that really ingrained reward system that they were given as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's all about habits, and we just don't realize how many habits we are. So to answer your question, I don't work with people who have clinical diagnosis of food disorders, but I do work with people who have carbohydrate cravings and emotional eatings, which I think, as regards to emotional eating, I suspect the vast majority of us eat emotionally from time to time. It's kind of a social norm to do that.
Right.
But obviously, for some people, they do it so much that it becomes a problem, and it manifests with physical symptoms.
Right. There's not an off switch.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's different components that you have to take to address that. And one of them is thinking about what you eat. So doing that reboot, for example, if you stop eating what I call quick release carbohydrates, those white floury carbohydrates, which really push our glucose levels up.
Like a donut.
Yeah, all of them, all those ones that you just think, oh, they're so delicious. But once you stop eating them, your body stops craving them. And really what's happening with your body is used to that quick glucose release. And when we think about it, we all have this urge, which is called hunger, to go and get food, which is good. We obviously need to eat.
We need the glucose and for our brain and body.
We do need the glucose, but we also store a lot of glucose.
Right.
So our body is perfectly capable of, when we're hungry, going, oh, there's no food coming, I better go and get some for myself.
Right.
Except that most of the time we don't give our bodies a chance to do that. We go, oh, I'm hungry, I better eat. And that's that quick glucose release that you just get. Your brain gets addicted to it, and you get a dopamine reward because your brain is going glucose, glucose, glucose. So one of the tools you can do is start by not doing that, which sounds very difficult, but I do think you can do most things for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, you will have, and it might take some people longer,
Right.
a bit longer, but for most people around 2 weeks is, you know, a good way to do this. Your taste buds have changed. So you're no longer seeking that really sweet, sugary flavor all the time, or salt, if salt is your thing.
Right.
And you've also managed to retrain your brain a bit, because you've gone, okay, when I was hungry, I didn't give my body that sweet, sugary rush. I gave it something else instead. And hey, look, my body is still functioning perfectly.
Right. Awareness is key there, right?
Exactly. So there are different levels that you have to address. So those are some of them. And I personally think that you have to address all 4 pillars. So let me
Yeah, let's talk about, let's do that. That was my next question. It's a good segue. Yeah, so let's talk about the 4 pillars.
We'll talk about the 4 pillars, and then I can go back to emotional eating. So pillar number 1 is how we eat. And in a nutshell, and, you know, talking about how we eat is super interesting. And, you know, there are podcasts dedicated to how we eat. But in a nutshell, it's about eating more fruit and vegetables and less refined carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the things I would say are lentils and legumes are your friends. You want to be making sure you include lentils and legumes because they're super healthy, but also they're a really good substitute for all of those white carbohydrates.
Right.
So you can take your favorite meal, which may be, let's say, spaghetti bolognese, and take out some of the spaghetti and some of the red meat and put in lentils and legumes and
mix it in.
Yeah, exactly. You've changed the dynamic of, you know, it's a slightly different meal, but it's not so amazingly different that people are going to go, oh, what is this strange thing that you're giving me?
Right. What is this strange foreign thing on my plate?
Exactly. It's still similar. Another thing I like is nuts and seeds. And I would say as well, you want to make sure you have the ones that aren't cooked in oil and they don't have
rancid in the package.
Yeah, exactly. And think about healthy oils as well. And I personally, I live in Spain, so extra virgin olive oil is the one that I recommend. But there are other oils. But for me, there is more research on extra virgin olive oil than there is on anything else. And it's easy.
Yeah, so, the Mediterranean diet, so to speak.
Yeah, well, exactly. It is the Mediterranean style diet. And there is quite a lot of research on the Mediterranean style diet. But essentially, you want something plant-based. And the great thing about plants is that not only are they easy and tasty and healthy, but they're also naturally low in calories.
Right.
And there's some really interesting maths you can do here. So if you take, well, we have these biscuits called hobnobs, and they have about 70 calories in them for one biscuit.
For one?
For one. They're just like plain, they're not anything hugely exciting, you know, they're just a round cookie. It's not like, you know, a donut, which has something like 500 calories in it. It's just a cookie. And if you think about cabbage, 100 grams of cabbage has around 30 calories in it. So you can eat 200 to 300 grams of cabbage for your one cookie. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember a time when I could eat an entire packet of cookies quite easily, but I have never in my life eaten an entire cabbage, and I love cabbage.
That'd be a lot of cabbage.
Exactly. So you can eat as much cabbage as you want, and it fills you up, and it's not giving you that calorie-dense food that other things are giving you. So vegetables are so amazing, and they're so healthy, and you can make them tasty. So that's pillar number 1 in a quick nutshell.
Right. Eating healthy with more fruits and vegetables and legumes and
and less packaged foods, less of the white refined carbohydrates.
Right. That's a big one. Packaged food.
Packaged food, but also, and it's not just packaged food. So packaged foods, yes, but also the white refined carbohydrates, because people do love their bread, their pasta, all those bread products. And they're not, you know, a little bit of them is okay, but they push up your glucose levels, they push up your insulin levels.
They spike.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can avoid them, great. And they're easy to replace.
Yeah.
When you get into the habit of them. Like I remember I used to eat bread all the time for lunch, and I remember giving up bread. I didn't think, oh my goodness, I'm going to deprive myself, but it was a strange thing. Like I'd eaten bread all my life. It was just the normal thing to do. Yeah. And now, years later on, my kids still love bread and we still have bread, but I'm like, I can take it or leave it. There's so much other delicious stuff on our table that I don't need the bread. I might have some from time to time, but I don't think, oh my goodness, my meal is incomplete if I don't have
Right, you're
bread.
deprived.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly.
but some people do feel that when, mentioning taking out the carbs and the glucose or bread, I think those are when I mention those three things to patients, that's when the alarm signal goes off,
It's habit. It's habits.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's habits and fear of the unknown, I would say as well. It's
Yes,
that, oh my goodness, this is my habit, this is my familiar, and you want to take my familiar away, and I don't know what to replace it with. But
right.
if we could just get a glimpse of the other side and go, oh, actually, it's not as bad as I thought. Actually, I really love this tasty, fresh food, and I feel much, much better on it. They
Yeah,
can then see the benefits of it. So, yes, I'm all for vegetables and easy, and things don't have to be difficult. So,
right.
that's pillar number one. Pillar number two is exercise and movement,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I think is the key to, well, obviously strength and so many health benefits in terms of
Mm-hmm.
lungs and hearts and legs and all of those things. But also, I think it's where we get our energy from. And I think a lot of people say, oh, I'm too tired to exercise.
Right.
And I say, you're thinking about it the wrong way. When you're tired is when you need to go and exercise, and then you will feel invigorated and full of energy. Somehow exercising gives us energy, and I don't quite understand how that works.
Right. How does that work? We're expending energy, but we feel better after, right? It's more oxygen to our brain, our
Oh
cells, and
yeah.
our body. So we like, woohoo, it's like an oxygen smoothie.
Yes. Oh, that's it. I love that. That's amazing. So yes, energy, exercising is our oxygen smoothie. And then sleep is another really important one,
Oh yeah.
particularly, well, either for like longevity and health, but also if you want to lose weight, sleep is really, really important. If you don't sleep well, you feel sleep deprived and you, well, feel grumpy. My children need to beware when I haven't slept well. But also you feel more hungry and your stress hormones are high. And, the stress hormones being cortisol, we know what happens if we give people, cortisol and steroids.
Yep.
They get
They
chunky
blow up.
obesity. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same if we are creating those stress hormones internally.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're more likely to eat more. I remember a few weeks ago, I had to stay up late for some online thing that I was doing. And the next day, I normally get up and do a 7-minute workout. And it felt like I was walking through treacle doing this.
Mm.
And I felt like I wanted to eat more. And I thought that everybody else was grumpy. And I said to my husband, why is everybody so grumpy? And he said, we're
You're
not.
grumpy. We're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, sleep is a really big thing that people overlook when they want to lose weight. They just think, oh, it doesn't make any difference. It does make a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the last pillar is your emotional wellness, which,
Right.
includes your stress levels. But if you're constantly stressed about something and constantly thinking, oh my goodness, I'm worried about money, or I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, your stress levels are going to be up and you're going to be inefficient in everything that you do. So your brain is busy working out what it's stressed about. You're not thinking about, oh my goodness, I need to go for my run, or I'm, cooking my vegetables, making all these changes. Your brain is doing something else. So that's the fourth pillar. And so just to loop back to emotional eating, we were talking about emotional eating. And, I think that when we address emotional eating, we have to address it from all four of those pillars.
Exactly.
Because it's easy for me to say, oh, go and eat vegetables for 2 weeks. But if you don't address the emotional eating bit and you don't address okay, but this is what I'm feeling and thinking, then that carries on. You're just going to go back to your emotional eating and it's not going to work. So you have to address all four of those pillars when you are looking at emotional eating.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And it's so holistic, right? Where you're addressing all the aspects of your body with food, nutrition, exercise, sleep, and the emotions. Like it's all connected. We have to have the balance of all of those together to have that ease and grace for healthy living, which I think is part of your, your main philosophy. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how do you do, is there a particular pillar that you focus on first? Let's say, you mentioned not tackling too many things at one time, because then you get overwhelmed. Is there, like, if somebody's going to come to you and start on one pillar, do you do that nutritional pillar first? Because you mentioned that like 2 weeks of like rebooting.
Yeah, exactly. So if they're coming to me with their number one focus being weight loss, then yes. When we look at healthy eating and exercise, a lot of people say, oh my goodness, I need to exercise more to lose weight. Actually, if you want to lose weight, 80% of it is what you eat, as opposed to exercise. And exercise is going to help you, and it's going to help you feel better. And there are loads of benefits to exercise. And I'm not at all saying people shouldn't exercise,
Right.
but you really want to be addressing that nutritional piece first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as well, you see, it almost feels like it's because it encompasses, you know, what your family eats and what your partner eats, and it's such a social thing to do. It might be that you're constantly going out with your in-laws at the weekend.
Right.
It has so many ramifications that I think the healthy eating piece can be one of the most stubborn ones to change. And so that's where I start. But the reverse of that is that when you change it, you can see quite a lot of differences. You can go, oh, wow, I've actually managed to do this. I've got through the 2-week reboot. And yeah, I didn't do it perfectly, but I have made a lot of changes in the last 2 weeks. And these are the ones that work for me. And these are the ones that don't work for me. And then as you go along, you can address the other pillars. So the pillar 4, the emotional piece, I call the foundation, and it comes up all the time. So, you know, thinking about the example of the chocolate, well, I'm giving up this chocolate. That's a nutritional piece. But when you start analyzing it from a point of view of, well, why are you still eating it? Well, actually, it's because I'm feeling stressed and tired, and I'm going to be looking at all of those thoughts and emotions that are surrounding that. Then you're addressing pillar number 4 as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. What you said there too is about, you know, when it comes to nutrition, the emotional aspect, and especially now, I think, you know, as we've been through COVID for such a long period of time, and people's stress levels are so elevated. And I think, you know, when we're in that parasympathetic state of actually being able to rest and digest, it opens our eyes. It allows us to be able to, you know, see the things that are contributing to our emotional piece. And so when people are moving out of, you know, they've been in this state of COVID, maybe they're still quarantined, they have their family with them, how do they move out of a state of, okay, I've been cooking everything at home for my family, that was super stressful. I think that was one of the main things that people had started to learn, that like, oh, it's, you know, not everybody, because not everybody some people were already had habits, like you said, of making healthy food for their whole family. But now they've been making food for their family. Maybe they've lost weight, or maybe they've gained weight for COVID. There was both sides of that, like you said, with the stress. How do they transition from that into this new place of like starting to go back to work? Maybe it's a completely different work. Maybe they're still working at home, but now their kids are going to school. How can they transition to that piece of really keeping that healthy nutrition as that foundation, or maybe reestablishing that healthy foundation for their kids and family?
Yeah, I think when we have changes, it's a really good opportunity to have a look and see what's working and what's not working. So thinking about, okay, it's what I call this habit audit, and saying, I've got this opportunity now to be intentional in making new habits. So thinking about what works and what doesn't work, and thinking about your limits again. So, you know, if we're thinking about, for example, feeding our children, what are my limits on allowing my children to eat sweet treats? How often am I going to allow them to do that? And how often, do you know what I mean? How often can I think about that in terms of, you know, they might be getting food from school.
Right.
Well, if they're getting a treat from school, that counts as their treat. It's not like they get a treat at home and then a treat at school.
Double bonus.
Yeah. So thinking about things like that. And then I think the next step is, well, okay, you implement what you want to happen, but there's a bit of trial and error. So
yeah,
see what happens and see what works. And, you know, sometimes you might think, well, this sounded like a really good idea, but actually it didn't work.
Yeah.
So let's try something else instead. So it's about constantly analyzing what's working and what's not working. But I think just keep it simple and think about those. Yeah, think about what I call crush moments in your day. So thinking about simple solutions. So for example, my Monday, my children have changed their routine. We've got summer routine now, but normally during wintertime, my Monday evening is what I call a crush day. My husband has an online call, I have an online call. And so we have to kind of squeeze dinner in, and I have to bring the kids home, and all of this has to happen in a short space of time.
Right. Poof.
Yeah, exactly. So on Monday, I use my slow cooker, and I do a vegetable curry, a vegetable chili, which I do at 7:30 in the morning. And I've done it so many times that I can sort of do it whilst I'm juggling the children as well. By 8 o'clock, dinner is cooked. And yes, on Monday, we do have the same food every single Monday because it's easy.
It's easy.
It's easy, but nobody actually noticed. It was months before my children suddenly piped up, we have this every Monday. And I'm like, yes, very well.
It's chili Monday.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So thinking about easy solutions that, and just keeping it simple. Vegetables are simple.
Yeah, one really good habit. Fancy.
No, exactly. And remembering that the reason we eat is for nutrition, not for emotional enjoyment. Get your emotional enjoyment from somewhere else.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the, do you have the Instapot? Is that what you use for your instant cooker?
No, I use a slow cooker.
A slow cooker.
Yeah, but I've got a tiny kitchen at the moment. So I might look into Instapots when I get a bigger kitchen. Yeah. But one thing I do is soak lentils and legumes basically every single night, pretty much every single night. Yeah. We don't have the variety in Spain. I have like 3 or 4 different types. So I just sort of rotate around, and quite often I soak them thinking I have no idea what I'm going to do with this tomorrow, but other than cook it. But then I've got those lentils and legumes, and it's really easy.
Yeah, I really like that piece you said, that keep it really simple. And, it doesn't have to be an elaborate meal plan, just coming through and saying like, okay, for me and my husband, we have different schedules, and I do the same thing. I'm like, Tuesday is always Taco Tuesday in our house. It makes it really easy. I can just make something really simple, or taco salad with beans and rice, and so when you have that routine, even though it seems repetitive, it's makes it easy, and it can bring like joy to the meal too, because you're realizing, oh, look how easy this was. We have extra time to spend together as a family. We can talk about things. We didn't have to have this elaborate plan to make dinner work tonight.
But I think as well, there are certain meals, and like tacos come into those, which are the same, but you can vary them. So
totally.
Tacos, you can have different proteins or different salads, and they're really useful as well for when you have picky children as well. So there are different types of them. Like we have pancakes, crepes that you can do the same thing with, and just present different vegetables with them, or like a salad bar. And then people can help themselves, but it's slightly different every time you do it. And it's a really good way to keep up your routine and have variety at the same time.
Right. Throw in something different. Yeah. Like you said, like a different protein, that makes it so easy and so no brainer. And so when there's that strategy, so when you're making the meals, so it sounds like it's really as keeping everything as simple for yourself and your family, then creates those easy habits, those simple habits for that simple lifestyle, healthy living, making it easy.
Yes, absolutely. So I always talk about the habit fairy, and that when you spend your day, like a lot of people will spend their day thinking at the back of their mind, what should I cook for dinner? What should I cook for dinner? And this is just draining your energy.
Totally draining.
If you've got a routine and you just know, okay, it's Tuesday, we have tacos on Tuesday, and I've prepared everything, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to take it out to the fridge. I'm going to chop a few things. It's so easy. And that allows your brain to then go and do something else and be productive, thinking about something else. We don't want to be using our creative energy to be addressing these boring routine things that our habit fairy can take care of.
Habit fairy. I love that. Yeah. I think I'm going to hashtag that one, habit fairy. If you haven't already, that's a great one. Excuse me. So I'm going to drink a little water. Excuse me. We're moving into hot weather here, so it's a little drier where I live. The humidity hasn't quite kicked in. Okay, so let's just kind of summarize things as we're wrapping up today. So one, you talked about creating these healthy habits, and then using your habit fairy to then making those habits stick, but in a really almost like a loving, healthy way. And Absolutely. Then And then two, using those four pillars to really helping establish those habits in a way that is easy for you, but also really sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. And what I would say is it can be very easy to go down what I call the negative plug hole of
Right.
your life,
Yeah.
essentially. So, you have a bad thing that happens and then you feel bad about it. So, for example, it might be that your children came in and were noisy and boisterous, and then you feel a bit upset, so you don't go for your walk, and then instead of
Right.
doing that, you eat some cake, and then you
Snowballs.
exactly, that's the negative plug hole. But it's also really easy to build on these habits and to go up the positive spiral. So you
Hmm.
start eating more healthily, and then you feel that, I'm a success, I can do this. Oh, I can start doing a little bit more exercise. And then you start thinking, oh, well, for example, I've got my run on Saturday morning. So I'm not going to drink that glass of wine on Friday evening because I want to feel full of energy on
Right.
Saturday morning. But it does have a knock on effect. And you do spiral upwards and you gradually just build up and think,
Mm.
yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah, it's
And
like a
you enjoy
habit
it.
cyclone.
Yeah, exactly. You get into the habit of creating new habits and you think,
Right.
I'm loving these habits.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And one last kind of fun question as we're wrapping up today, Dr. Orlena. If you had the biggest budget that was unlimited, what would you do to make the biggest health impact on the planet?
That is a really interesting question, actually. Well, it would be about healthy vegetables and about making sure that people could buy vegetables. And I think one of the things is if you look at studies that they've done, people don't really think in terms of health. They think in terms of where they can buy food. So if you
Right.
look at the
Mhm.
Mediterranean here in Spain, we have a vegetable market and lots of people go to the vegetable market. But that's not because they're super virtuous and they think about vegetables. It's because there's a vegetable market. So I think what I would do was try and fund putting vegetable markets all over the world and getting
Mm.
rid of supermarkets and all of those cheap packaged foods. And actually people would just adapt and they would buy those fruit and vegetables and getting rid of
Mm.
cigarettes as well. But
Yeah, that's another good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's far more to do with location and what's available than what our brains say. So, for example, in big inner cities where they don't have access to vegetables and fresh fruit and vegetable stalls, people don't eat fresh fruit and vegetables, which isn't surprising when you
Right.
think about it. But yeah, I think it would be put farmers markets on in every little tiny town.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. We do that a lot where I live. And it does make people, one, it supports their health, eating more vegetables. It also supports the local community, right? It's like a win-win for everyone because it's helping, the more that we can help our local community, then they're healthier because they're creating that healthy environment in their own business and in their entrepreneurship, and then helping the people eat healthy at home. It's like this whole great community that gets created. And we could easily have those on every corner. Like
Yes,
and like
well,
in New
yeah,
York, it's like that. You just like go out your door and there's a healthy market like right at the bottom of your stairs.
yeah. And here in Spain, it's a weekly event as well, and
Hmm.
people get dressed up. Not obviously so much now, but normally. And you go and you socialize and you meet people, and the whole town comes together, and it's
Hmm.
just fun. Yeah, I really love it. I love going to market. It's a bit different now. Now I go super early and hope to avoid everybody because we're not vaccinated at the moment.
Yeah.
But I still enjoy it.
Right. Yes. Well, I think things are shifting. We'll have a new normal, whatever that new normal is, where people are going to be socializing, enjoying getting together, and enjoying good food all over again.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Orlena. It's been so great to have you. I learned a lot about health, nutrition, how to make it easy. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.